to be when someone would say post it, you would think of one of these, right? You guys know what these are, right? I mean, you're not that young, right? Post-its, right? At least when I was your age, if someone said post-it, like this was the only thing that came to mind because this was an actual post-it. But nowadays, if we say post-it, we think of something different, right? We're thinking about posting something on social media. Post it to your page, post it to your status, post that picture, something like that. Social media has changed the way that we communicate this word. Now, if you're like me, most days, the very first thing that I do when I wake up is I grab my phone and I look at it. And I scroll through social media. Anybody else like that? You can be honest, okay? Like, honestly, before I even look in the mirror and see my face, I've seen a retweet from somebody that I've never met before, okay? Like, and I can imagine for you as well, as you scroll through Instagram or TikTok or something like that, that's true for you as well. Before you even put your feet on the ground, you have seen someone dance or sing or something like that that you've never even met before. And this is the world that we live in. And so as we talk about social media, I want to encourage you, go ahead and follow us, right? We post great content, and we need the followers. We do. We really do. Not on Twitter, just mostly Instagram. If you could follow us there, that'd be great. I love social media. I can find great encouragement from social media. I love sharing pictures of my own family and videos of things that we do. I love seeing that from my own family and friends. In fact, I love when you guys post too. I see what you do on fall break and different things like that based on what we post. And so social media is a great thing. I'm not going to stand up here tonight and ask you to rid yourself of social media. That's not what this conversation is going to be like. But if you feel that tension, maybe that's something you should consider. Maybe your parents make you do that. I'm not really sure. But I'm not going to ask you to do that tonight. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about some of the things that we need to talk about. Because you know, as well as I do, maybe even better, that there's an ugly part of social media, right? There's some ugly things that happen on there. You know that. And here's the deal. We can talk a lot about what you post, the pictures that you post, the statuses that you put, whatever. And we'll get to some of that stuff. But I want to start somewhere else because there's another side of social media that's important, and that's the stuff that you send personally. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? The stuff that's behind the scenes, the stuff that's not on your feed, the stuff that you send in those direct messages, the private chats, maybe even just text messages. The things that are only for a few eyes to see, not for all of your followers to see. That's where I want to focus our time tonight, because oftentimes when we talk about social media, we often just say, because it's easy, it's really easy to put a front and let people see what you want them to see. But there's a whole other side of character and integrity there on display in your direct messages, in your private chats. That's where we're going to go tonight. So let me ask you this. How cool would you be with me taking your phone tonight and just looking at your direct messages and your text messages? I'm not looking at, I don't know what's going on over there. Would you be cool with that? Maybe for some of you, you're like, I don't got nothing to hide, but I imagine I'm not going to do that, okay? But I can imagine for many of you, there's a little bit of hesitancy, and I'm not sure why, but I can guess one reason is, well, Matt, that's not for your eyes to see, right? It wasn't for you. And two, maybe, just maybe, you have typed things or sent things that we can just call questionable. And maybe you wouldn't want me to see. Maybe you wouldn't want other people to see. So privacy is an interesting thing because we all want that. We all want some level of it. Some of you have private accounts where you only let certain people follow you. Not everybody does that. And we all want some privacy, but there is this part of this in social media, this private direct messaging, those type of things, that's important for us to talk about. And don't make the mistake that this doesn't apply to you because you feel like you've never messed up in that area, or maybe you don't even have social media. This does apply to you. This matters to Jesus. And I know obviously social media didn't exist when Jesus was around, but the things that we're going to look at apply to how we behave and act within social media. So I want to read our text for us tonight. It's coming from Luke chapter 12. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at this, and then we're going to kind of discover some things that we can apply to our lives and to social media in how we interact. And so here's what it says. Luke chapter 12. Meanwhile, the crowds grew until thousands were milling and stepping on each other. And Jesus turned to his disciples and warned them, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees, their hypocrisy. The time is coming when everything that is covered up will be revealed, and all that is secret will be made known to all. Whatever you have said in the dark will be heard in the light, and what you have whispered behind closed doors will be shouted from the housetops for all to hear. So this is the main text that we're going to touch on tonight. And here's what I want you to do. If you got a phone with you, I just want you to take out your phone. I'm not going to ask you to use it. I just want you to have it in your hands. Because much of what we're going to talk about tonight is directed to how you behave on your phone, okay? I'm going to imagine most of you don't use social media on a computer. You use it on your phone. And so the things that you type, the things that you send, happens here. And so I just want this to be like a physical thing that you touch and remember as we discover these truths tonight, that they do apply to you. Whether they're right now or in the near future, these are important things. And so as we looked at this text, there are two important truths that I want you to see. I'm going to put them both on the screen at the same time. As Jesus points out, this is what he says. The first one is that we have to be on guard against hypocrisy. He says that, and then he says, whatever is done in private will be made public. Two very different things, but we're going to discover these things. In fact, the first one, we have to be on guard against hypocrisy. We're going to cover that next week, okay? So if you come back next week, we're going to look at what this means, how you can be, how you can have integrity in what you post and what you portray about yourself so that you're not a hypocrite. And Jesus actually talks a lot about that in the Gospels, and we'll talk about that next week on what you actually post. But for tonight, this truth. Whatever is done in private will be made public. Now, if you were like me, that's a little scary, right? All of us, whether we're talking about social media or not, have things that are private in our lives that we definitely don't want public. But what Jesus says here in this moment is concerning for us on that level. Whatever is done in private will be made public. That's what he says. Now, there are good things to keep in private, and there are things that you shouldn't keep in private. So here's the way that I can put those two things next to each other. Good secrets versus bad secrets, right? I think of giving and praying and fasting. If you go back to Matthew chapter 6, you see how Jesus talked about giving, praying, and fasting as things that are good to be kept in secret. When you give, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, right? When you fast, don't proclaim it to everybody. And when you pray, go into your room and pray to your Father who is in heaven, and he will hear from you. This is how Jesus says, it's okay to have some things in secret, some things in private, some things that are just between you and God. Those are things that are okay to keep in private. But then there's also other things I think of, like lying and cheating and stealing. Those are all bad secrets, right? When you lie to somebody, you don't want to get found out. That's a bad secret. When you cheat on a test or on homework or something like that, you're hoping you don't get caught. You're hoping that doesn't get made public. All these type of things. There's a difference between some things that should be kept private and other things that we keep private because we're scared of the consequences of what will happen. So when I'm talking about secrets, when I'm talking about privacy and these type of things within social media, here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the direct messages that you send in these apps. In Snapchat, we all know what that's like, right? You send the snap, they look at it, it disappears. You think, it disappears, it's gone, right? The direct messages that you can send in Instagram and TikTok, I'm sure there's other things that I don't even know about. And honestly, I'm talking about your text messages too. I know that's not like social media, but that's a private thing that you can send between people that maybe there's some things that we can learn there as well. So this is what we're going to look at tonight. Here's what Jesus says again. I want to read these words again. The time is coming when everything that is covered up will be revealed, and all that is secret will be made known to all. Whatever you've said in the dark will be heard in the light, and what you have whispered behind closed doors will be shouted from the housetops for all to hear. Everything that is covered up will be revealed. Okay? So I have two truths that I want you to recognize and understand tonight as you think about what you're holding in your hands and how you interact with social media in direct messages, private chats, text messages. Here's the first one. What's done in private doesn't always stay in private. You know that this can be true, right? Like in your brains, I think that most of you are smart enough to recognize this truth that what's done in private doesn't always stay in private, but we don't always act like that, right? Think about Snapchat for a second, okay? You send a snap, you send it to a friend or whatever, and you send something, and they look at it, and then it's gone. You think, man, this is great, right? Until you get that notification. What's the notification? They took a screenshot, right? Then all of a sudden, the thing that you have sent in private, the thing that was supposed to disappear, the thing that was supposed to be for their eyes only and for nobody else, all of a sudden there's a screenshot and there's a potential that it doesn't stay private. Story after story that we could go through about how we've seen this go wrong. Here's one. This happened 5 years ago at Plainfield High School. That's where I grew up. At Plainfield High School, maybe you've seen this on the news, maybe not. 5 years ago, you probably weren't watching the news, okay? So, but there was a football player at Plainfield High School. He was actually the starting quarterback for the football team. Did something really stupid in school. There was a teacher who had a dress on, and he got a nice little angle where he took a picture, and then he sent that snap to a couple of his buddies. You know what happened, right? You probably finished the story, right? Buddies took a screenshot, sent it to everybody. Now all of a sudden, everybody's got this very inappropriate picture, gets spread around. He gets called down to the school, expelled, and his family moved away. All from one moment where he took a Snapchat and sent it to just 3 of his friends. And all of a sudden, what was supposed to be private has been made public, and the consequences for him were severe. It just takes one. It just takes one moment for you to leave your phone unlocked, for someone to take a screenshot, for someone to take a screenshot of a text or a picture that you sent or whatever it is, whatever app or whatever you use it. Just takes one person to think, that's funny, I'm going to send that to so-and-so, and now it's out of your control. I'm not trying to scare you, I'm really not, because, again, I like social media. I want you to recognize this truth. What happens in private doesn't always stay in private. That's what Jesus said. There's a time when the things that are covered up will be revealed, and the things that are said in the dark will be shouted from the housetops for everybody to hear. What is it talking about your direct messages? But the truth, the principle is the same, that what you do in private, what you do with one other person behind the scenes, behind the screen, may not always stay private. I want you to recognize that, because the sooner that you recognize this, the better off that you can live. Now, I want you to think of a biblical example, like David and Bathsheba. Most of you are probably familiar with that story, but if you're not, you can find it in 1 Samuel. And David was the king, he had become king, and some great things had happened for him. And he had this moment of vulnerability where he made a huge mistake. He had a sexual sin with Bathsheba, and he tried to cover it up. He tried to hide it so that nobody would find out about it. And then if you know the story, that all unravels and spirals in his face, and he had severe consequences for that action. A moment where what he had done, he wanted it to stay in private. He wanted it to stay a secret. It didn't stay a secret. And he had to live with those consequences for the rest of his life. And they were dire consequences. That's just one example of what is done in private doesn't always stay in private. There's a lot of other ones. You probably could think of some, even your friends, that have had to deal with this. Just because it's supposed to be private doesn't mean it'll stay that way. So, for you, think about this. The snaps that you send, the texts, direct messages. Again, I don't know how this applies across the board to all of you. Maybe some of you are feeling like really uncomfortable right now, but maybe some of you are like, this isn't a problem for me. I don't know. But here's what I do know. You have these moments all the time. And as you get older, some of you are 15, some of you are 18. This is a conversation for the rest of your life. Honestly, I don't know where social media is going. But you're going to have these moments of integrity where how you behave when no one is looking is important. And it takes one moment for you to think no one will find out. And then people find out, and you got to deal with that. So what I'm telling you is be careful with what you send. So here's the second thing I want you to recognize. Number 2. So if one is, everything doesn't stay private. The second one is this. Our character and our integrity are actually revealed in our direct messages, in our private chats. Our private chats reveal our character and our integrity. I need you to think about this sentence for a second, okay? Your character and your integrity are revealed by what you do in private, or exposed is another word. So we have to believe this, so we have to live like this. Just because people don't know about it or won't see it doesn't mean it's okay. Now, I won't get super personal for a second, but I need you to wrestle with this. And I want you to know something, that when I stand up here and I talk to you about this, recognizing I don't know the full weight of all the things that you go through. When I was in high school, you don't want to see the type of phone that I had when I was in high school. It was not capable of the things that you guys are dealing with and doing right now. In fact, I didn't get that would make me sound really old. I didn't get a phone until I was 17 years old, okay? And so when I started dealing with text messages where it started and all that kind of stuff, I want you to know that the things that you deal with and go through daily, dealing with social media and all that kind of stuff, I can't fully relate to. Now, I'm on some of the same apps, I know that, but I'm also not a teenager. But here's what I want you to know. Just because no one sees the things that you sin doesn't mean that you can sin and do whatever you want behind the scenes. So, making fun of people who are different than you in a text message, in a chat, in a snap, not okay. Asking for nudes, sending nudes, not okay. Here's how I know this is true. There was one, I obviously won't say the name. There was one year I was on my way back from CIY, several years ago. I was on my way back and I was on the bus. We had this great week at Move, amazing, like it always is. I'm on the bus, I'm kind of flipping through Snapchat, seeing like all this kind of stuff. And I see a Snap story from one of the guys who's on the bus with me that asks for nudes from anyone who's following him. It's insane. These things that maybe you see or deal with, you got to recognize just because you send that in private doesn't mean that it's okay. Spreading rumors, cheating on schoolwork. Let's get real for a second, because that's a common thing. I get it. I know that. But just think about that. Your character and your integrity are revealed in what you do behind the scenes and all these type of things. Question that you have to ask is this. Do you care? Do you care enough about your character and your integrity, your relationship with God, to face these things and deal with these things, even if you struggle with them? And that's honestly a sad thing that I even have to ask, but I'm asking it. Do you care enough about your relationship with God to deal with these things on social media, these direct messages, these things that maybe you have fallen with before, you've messed up? Do you care enough to say, man, I need to get this right? The answer should be easy. The answer should be easy. Yes, I should care enough. You think about what Jesus has given on behalf of you, gave his life, came to this world, gave his life on behalf of all of you so that you can be spared from eternity away from God. And we have to ask the question, do I care enough about my relationship with him to deal with some of these things that I'm doing behind the scenes? It's easy to neglect this area of our lives because no one will find out. But if we're honest, we can recognize that, one, we've already disproven that. People can find out. Those things can be revealed. And number two, to go in with this point, God is always watching. He's always there. He's always with you. We sing those things. You are there. You are with me. You are for me. You go before me. You're always with me. Well, that's true. And what your thumbs do on this, he's always with you. Listen to this from John chapter 3. It says, everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. And what I find interesting about this is this sentence right here. The part that says, and they will not come into light for the fear that their deeds will be exposed. I feel like many of us can live in this realm all the time, where we are scared to come into God's presence because we are afraid of what will be exposed. It's honestly the reason why so many people have a hard time confessing things to other people, confessing your sins to someone, right? Which is like, it sounds weird to say, but like the Bible actually, like the New Testament actually tells us to do that. Confess your sins to others, right? So that you can be prayed for and so that you can find healing, right? We struggle with this. We struggle with confession because it exposes and it brings our sin to light. And so we get scared. We can't live that hidden life, a secretive life. And so, all right, let me wrap this up. I want you to think about this. Now, I mentioned this at the beginning, but I want you to think about this. If you take your phone, everybody got your phone in your hand again, okay? If you were to imagine and say, and I don't know what your rules are in your house, okay? But if you were to imagine that you were to unlock your phone and you were to hand it over to your mom or your dad, okay? Let's just pick whichever one makes you more uncomfortable, all right? Your mom or your dad. And you were to say, here, before I delete anything, I want you to look at my texts. I want you to open up TikTok. I want you to open up Snapchat. I want you to open up Instagram, whatever it is. And you can look at all the messages that I've sent to people. How uncomfortable would that make you? Scale yourself, 1 to 10. How uncomfortable would that make you? Would you be like, yeah, it's no problem? Or would you be like, well, yeah, there's some things in there that mom and dad can't see. This is one way to judge yourself, really, to say, do you have a problem with this? I mean, and here's what I'm saying. I don't want you to feel like this is what I'm telling you to do, okay? That'd be kind of weird, all right? So I'm not asking you to do that, but here's what I am saying. Maybe somebody should have access to it. Maybe somebody in your life that you trust should be some type of accountability person to say, or even if they're not looking at it, but they're asking you those questions. Are you staying pure? Are you staying right? Or what are you doing behind the scenes? Somebody should be asking you those questions. This is how you fight it. It's really hard to do it all by yourself. So privacy, something that we all want, but what we do behind the scenes, number one, doesn't always stay behind the scenes. And number two, it reveals the type of character and integrity that we have. And so here's what I want to challenge you with as I close, is this. I want you to do something with this conversation. It's really, really easy to shell yourself up and be like, this is not something that I want to talk about. It's really easy to do that. If you find yourself wrestling, knowing that you've messed up in this area, knowing that you struggle, knowing that you're not perfect, do something with it. Tonight, talk with someone, ask for a little bit of accountability, whatever that looks like. Maybe you could discuss that in your groups. It could be different from a freshman girl to a senior boy. I'm not really sure. But don't leave this place just going, yeah, that's something that I struggle with, and leave it at that. This is serious stuff. This is stuff that can alter your life if you don't get it under control. We've seen people after people fail behind the scenes in what they've sent, an email that was sent. People have lost their jobs in their companies. Coaches have been fired from emails that have been sent, let alone a Snapchat that can be sent. And so I just want you to consider that. Here's the last verse I want you to see. Ecclesiastes 12. I'm leaving a lot of stuff out, but here's what it is. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. That is a futuristic view of what will happen in the future. But here's what I want you to know is my bottom line is this. Be wise with how you use social media with private messages. Man, that's such a simple thing. Be wise. Be wise. You know what you should and you shouldn't do, but do you care enough to make the right choice?